Good evening everyone. Welcome to this video of Axiux, and in today's video we are going to talk about another kind of exploitation like bind shell, reverse shells and a lot of different other exploitation basics. So here I have my metasploitable box running, okay, and I have scanned the system with nmap, and after exploiting the first FTP service, the SSH service, and the share service here, so we are going to look into exploiting the Java RMI registry service that's open on port 1099. So Java RMI registry is a service that's running here on this particular port. To find out if there is any exploit related to this service, the thing I'll first do is Java RMI Exploitation. So now when I first open this, I'm going to see that this particular site, Rabbit7, which is a metasploitable site, and the site which gives you different module names of metasploitable modules, tells you that this module takes advantage of this default configuration of RMI registry and RMI active services. So this is an exploit, and this is the path of the exploit. So this is the same thing you do when you search in Metasploit in order to find a exploit. So apart from that, doing this is quicker. So now we'll wait for Metasploitable to load up, and in this video, we are also going to see what this bind shell and reverse shell stands for. What does this actually mean? And we are also going to learn about meterpreter. So giving you a primer, meterpreter is a shell of Metasploit. It is a flagship shell which Metasploit uses. Now why would Metasploit use a different shell? See, the videos like in the previous video, when we got a shell, it was a sh shell. That is a shell where we can type directly commands, just like the Linux shell, which is also an sh shell. So in by using a meterpreter shell, we will be able to have commands which are also commands will actually execute scripts on the remote system. Like for instance, if I type migrate -f when I am trying to hack into a Windows XP or a Windows system, what it is gonna do is it is gonna migrate itself. It is gonna migrate the exploitation Trojan into another process. Now, what does this mean? This means, like for instance, I am attacking on the SMB service. So once I get a shell attacking the SMB service and somebody shuts down the SMB service, I will not have a shell anymore because I am running under the SMB service, right? So if I migrate, once I get a shell, this will make me migrate as a different process. Like for instance, Explorer exe or Notepad exe, which is pretty much always loaded in Windows, and thus the chances of your connection to get lost gets diminished. So likewise, there are a ton of commands which we'll see in the less tutorials, but for now let's use this module, Java RMI server, and we set the R host to 192.168.56.101, right? So once we have set this R host, now the next thing is to see the number of payloads. Like as I said, that payloads are scripts that will be executed on the server. So here we see a decent number of scripts. We see Java meterpreter bind TCP, Java meterpreter reverse TCP. Well, now what does this mean, bind and reverse? Now bind and reverse means that when you open a bind connection, you are basically giving the script which will open a port on the remote server itself. Like in the previous video, when we had this Metasploit remote shell and a bind server, we could directly connect to it because this bind shell is already open on the system, and I just need to connect to it to use it. Now that is what a bind TCP is. But what a reverse TCP is what, when I send this payload and the remote computer executes it, it sends the shell back to my machine where I'll be listening at a particular port, and it sends the shell back to my machine. Now to better understand the concept, let's use a bind shell first, right? So here I'll use a Java shell bind TCP. So here use paste. And now, no, sorry, use exploit, set our host, set payload. Okay, so now when I exploit this, you would see that this I am not getting a shell, and that is because the remote computer is not being able to open a shell directly on the metasploitable machine. So I'm not being able to execute a bind shell with the help of metasploitable. So with the help of this script, this Java shell bind TCP script, so this shell code isn't giving me a shell. So to get a shell back to my server, what I need to do is I need to listen and let the connection from that machine come to mine. So in that way, I will be able to fool the firewalls, the different rules which the firewall rules or the network rules which the computer or the network admin might have applied to the computer, for which I am not being able to open a port and connect to it. But on the other hand, I can make the other computer connect back to a port on my computer. So all I need to do here is I need to search for show payloads again, and this time I would choose a different payload. I would choose, say, reverse HTTPS connection, right? So if I copy this and if I paste it here and then I type exploit, I would get an error. Now why am I getting an error? I'm getting an error because I told Metasploit which computer to exploit, but I did not tell Metasploit that what L host or what local host or what IP to connect back to when you use a reverse HTTPS. Now as you understand from the concept, I said that this payload is just gonna give a connection back to my IP address. Now for instance, if I have to make that happen, I have to give them my IP address. Now in Metasploit you can run direct direct scripts which will be used by the Linux shell itself. So I type ifconfig and it executes that, and here I have this IP address. This is my IP address, and I will be, if I do show options, you will see that this particular exploit has this option lhost, which is a local listener where it will connect back to. So let me set lhost to this IP address. Now once this is done, and once all the other was done, or all the options are done, I can directly click on exploit and get an shell back to my server. So let's do an exploit. When we do an exploit, we see that I am opening a reverse handler. That is, my Metasploit opens a reverse handler, that is meterpreter, and meterpreter is able to handle this command directly from the computer. So I am not having a different shell. I am having meterpreter shell. I am not having what is the benefit of it? Like for instance, that help. I see all these different commands which I can give in meterpreter, but I cannot give in the local shell. I can simply type a command shell from which I will get the shell I had in the previous video. But meterpreter is that enhanced version of shell for hackers which Metasploit had made, and you can use all different commands to make use of it. So we'll get to looking more into meterpreter in the next videos, but for now understand that we started a reverse handler on our computer, and when the payload, that is this payload, got executed in the machine, the metasploitable machine, it gave me a shell back in my computer, in my port 843. So now I have a connection that is opened from my computer to that computer's port. From that computer's port, and as you see, this is a higher port, so this means this computer connected back to my computer at this port. So this is the basic difference between reverse connections and bind connections. Now there is also another thing that I would want to show you, that oftentimes you would see that when you look at the payloads, you would see that there are different slashes here. Now what does this mean? This means that there are certain payloads which are called staged and not staged. That is why Java reverse TCP stager. Now what does this mean? This means that this exploit is staged. That is, first the computer is supposed to just first it says that it's Java. So this means that this is a shell code that is basically used in Java environment, right? Second, shell bind TCP. Like first you send the code to get a shell, then you send the code to get a bind TCP. But yeah, shell reverse TCP. So you directly send the code to send shell reverse TCP at once. So why would you use this and this? What is the basic difference between these two exploits? These two payloads. The basic difference here is, for instance, you are running and you are trying to exploit a system where the amount of bytes you can send in exploitation is very less. In that case, you are going to use a staged payload. That staged payload is gonna first send this and then send this. While in a system where it can handle any number of or more than the number of this payload, than the number of bytes occupied by this payload, you can send this payload right away and get a reverse inline shell right in front of you. So this kind of exploitation is very much specific to which kind of system you are trying to hack. Like for instance, I know that this exploit is gonna give me a shell, but which payload is gonna give me the best shell is something which I do not know, because I did not hack, I did not debug that RMI server to see the exact number of bytes. How would you know that? What you would know that by hosting RMI server and exactly knowing or reading this exploit from GitHub and exactly knowing how many number of bytes you are actually sending to this computer. Now once you know that, you can of course use the exploit which you think suits best. But as a matter of trial and error, you can also try different payloads. Like we tried the shell bind TCP and then the reverse HTTPS and it hit. So you can try the different payloads and wait until it works. So selecting of compatible payloads is something which you have to wait on trial and error now, unless you need to figure it out yourself by debugging an RMI server, which might be a little difficult for you right now. So that's all for this video. I hope you understand the difference between bind and reverse TCP and staged and not staged payload. So I hope you enjoy these videos, and please recommend us if you have friends in the InfoSec community. Thanks.